7. And McCarron goes down the field, and it's caught and breathes in for the touchdown.
Two things in life that suck: death, taxes, and 85 will always go.
Welcome to New Stripe City, an urban podcast for diehard Bengals fans. I'm your host, Ace Boogie, and today's episode number 4, entitled Mini-Zamp, where we'll dive into a multitude of topics such as Andy Dalton being elite, Mario Alford impressing in Minicamp, the Bengals and Vikings announcing a joint practice, and who will replace Vontaze Burfict. Let's get into it, guys. With that being said, we'll get into our first segment, press coverage. And in related news and updates, the Bengals have announced that they will hold 2 joint practices on August 10th through the 11th before they match up with the Minnesota Vikings on August 12th. So Big Zim, Mike Zim, will be coming back to the jungle for a joint practice. Andy Dalton also landed number 35 on the NFL Top 100 list, a list that is compiled of votes by NFL players. It was great to see the Red Rifle get his due respect. Also, Brandon LaFell compared Andy Dalton to Tom Brady and said that Dalton was way better than he's been advertised. A big, huge vote of confidence from new wide receiver Brandon LaFell. Another big announcement was that James Wright continued to work on the sideline in Minicamp in a limited fashion, but this was his very first return from microfracture surgery after he suffered a knee injury in 2014. So that wide receiver room just got a little bit more crowded. But in other news, unfortunately, Tyler Boyd seemed to have suffered a minor knee injury. He was spotted wearing a brace, but it's believed that the injury is minor. Also, Chykie Brown randomly has decided to impress people in camp and actually caught the eyes of cornerback coach Kevin Coyle. And also, the offense has looked extremely fluid under Ken Zampese. Rey Maualuga hosted the Taste of the NFL, and linebacker Gionni Paul was waived. And that brings us to our next segment here on New Stripe City, announcements. So there are several announcements that I wanted to make. First, we have our Boogie's bag has been made and posted on our blogger. So check out our blog spot. Our link is in the description and will be also posted on the screen. And you will see a section on the right side which says Boogie's Bag. So if you'd like to submit your Boogie's Bag questions there and you might not be on Twitter and don't know how to reach us, you can reach us on our website with Boogie's Bag. Again, Boogie's Bag is our segment that's going to be our mailbag segment here on New Stripe City, in which I will answer your questions on the air. Who Dat Nation. A second announcement is that we are now on SoundCloud. So if you'd like to hear audio clips and you're a SoundCloud member, you can find us under the name New Stripe City. And also, we will be coming to iTunes very soon. So stay tuned for that. I will make an announcement on my Twitter, and I will make a post on the blog to announce when we are officially on iTunes, and everyone who has iTunes or Apple will be able to listen to this podcast frequently on there. Last but not least, we'll talk about our Twitter poll recap. And for those who didn't know, I posted the poll originally on Twitter, but for those who are not on Twitter, I also posted our poll on our blog as well. So the results yielded some very interesting details, and there was a narrow victory for Kevin Zeitler right over Tyler Alford by literally 1 vote. Both players received a tremendous amount of votes. Zeitler received 13 total votes, and Alford received 12. Andrew Whitworth received 1 vote. Draper Kirkpatrick Drake Kirkpatrick received no votes, and unfortunately Ryan Hewitt wasn't an option. My thoughts on this are that, as usual, Bengals fans tend to favor Kevin Zeitler over some of his other constituents and counterparts, which I totally agree with. I also feel that Zeitler would be the smartest signing. Will it get done? I'm not sure. A guy that I would have liked to also have included in this conversation, who I believe will probably be the next guy to sign, is tight end / fullback, H-back, Ryan Hewitt. So it'll be interesting to see what goes down. But we will have another Twitter poll, and I will also post this on Twitter as well on our website and our blog. So make sure you stay tuned for that. We also have created our Facebook page. So if you're a fan of the show and you truly like it and Facebook is more flexible for you, make sure you stop on there and like us. You can find us under the name New Stripe City, and we greatly appreciate it. And we would love to have some topics posted on there as well. And now we'll kick off the segment that you guys have all been waiting for, Bengals Real Talk. And our first topic is Andy Dalton, an elite quarterback. I think he is. And if you just look at the numbers last year, this guy proved that he deserves to be in an elite class of quarterbacks. This guy finished last year top five in efficiency, putting up some staggering touchdown to interception ratio numbers with 3.57. That's outstanding. He had more total passing yards in a season where he was injured than Teddy Bridgewater had the entire season. Pro Football Focus has also rated this guy the third best quarterback when it comes to play action. I mean, a guy is a top 5 quarterback. How is he not elite?
Some respect.
I mean, this guy last year,
some respect on him.
His whole persona, his IQ, his attitude was on an entirely different level. This guy went from being a guy who would sit like this after throwing an interception to getting in guys' faces, going to the line, making pre-snap reads, changing everybody's opinion about him. I mean, it's clear that this guy had a chip on his shoulder the size of a boulder, and he proved his critics wrong last year. Just look at the ESPN magazine. It's like, bruh.
Some respect on him.
Yeah, I'm here now. So, to me, I think when you look at the year that this guy had, if he has another year like that, AD is definitely going to be an elite quarterback. And it's funny to me that he's been criticized for so long. When you look at the list of second-round quarterbacks outside of Drew Brees, none of those guys have performed or been as solid as Andy. This guy has never missed the playoffs. He continues to keep the Bengals in the hunt. He does what he's supposed to do. He's cut down his turnovers. He stepped up his leadership and vocability. And he stepped up his play. He is the missing cog in the Super Bowl puzzle for the Cincinnati Bengals. And if Andy Dalton can play like he did last year, the NFL is in trouble. I will tell you that. Now, we also talk about, and a lot of people like to compare him to Cam Newton. Yes, Cam Newton just won an MVP, but look at the other quarterbacks in that class before you step to Andy Dalton. Where is Blaine Gabbert? Where is Jake Locker? Okay, these were guys. Where is Christian Ponder? Is he sitting on his couch somewhere? Come on, man. This guy was a great player. He might not be Cam, but he doesn't try to be Cam. He doesn't need to be Cam. He just needs to be Andy Dalton. And it's clear that he's taken a step to the next level. And next we'll get into the positional outlook for the linebacker position and who we think is going to be able to replace Tez. Okay? So during Minicamp, Rey Maualuga and Tez set out the majority of practice with conditioning issues. Rey Maualuga never practiced. Vontaze Burfict was able to practice in one of those sessions. Okay? So while Rey Maualuga was out, Vontaze Burfict, Vincent Ray, and Carlos Dansby all rotated at the middle linebacker position. Nick Vigil got his feet wet which Vontaze Burfict was comparing this guy to Luke Kuechly. So he will also be in the rotation as well. But the issue is, who is going to replace Vontaze Burfict? And that is something that we, as of now, do not know. And the Bengals are trying to figure it out. And Paulie G has said that it might not just be one guy. It may be a multitude of guys. So we could see guys like Paul Dawson, Marquise Flowers, and Vincent Rey all command that position. And we could see a lot of flexibility within this linebacker core. You're talking about a core which has guys that can play several different positions. So you can have Carlos Dansby play Sam. He can also play the middle. And you have other guys who can do the same as well. So it'll be very interesting to see what the Bengals do. I agree with Paulie. I kind of see them doing a multitude of things, such as mixing a bunch of guys in there and having a bunch of guys rotate in and rotate out. And I'm very interested to see how this all shapes out. Now, there are certain guys who may be locks, but there are certain guys who are also on the roster bubble. So it'll be interesting to see if some of those guys can make it. Can Marquise Flowers finally stay healthy? Can Nick Vigil do more than special teams? Typically, the Bengals like to start guys like Vigil off on special teams. Will he actually be able to develop in there? Nick Roach is a guy that a lot of people are sleeping on that the Bengals like as well. So there is a crowded locker room there. When you look at the depth chart, they have Carlos Dansby penciled in at the Sam. He's being backed up by Trevor Roach. A lot of people have forgot about Jason DeMonchi, another solid contributor that was a college free agent from 2013. You also have Rey Maualuga at the middle, Vincent Rey backing him up, Nick Vigil. I mean, there's a lot of different places that these guys can be interchanged. And then at the will position, of course, you have Vontaze Burfict, Marquise Flowers, Paul Dawson, and Desmond Johnson. So there's a lot of guys that will rotate and play multiple positions. And we all know that the Bengals like guys who can play multiple positions. And also keep an eye out for Taylor Mays, who will be used in that hybrid role as a linebacker / safety if he does make the roster. Next, I'd like to talk about the positional outlook at the wide receiver position. Now that we've had Minicamp out of the way, there were a lot of nuggets that came through, primarily on my boy, Mario Alford, aka Super Mario. And I really like this guy. I liked him last year. He was my sleeper pick last year in Bengals Real Talk. And to me, he wasn't able to get on the field and get the opportunities needed. And primarily that's been due to his dependability and his consistency. And Ken Zampese wants to see that from Alford before he puts him out there on the field. So it looks like Alford has definitely made some progress from some of the tweets that went out. It seems like he made some pretty jaw-dropping plays in camp, and looks like he actually beat Pac-Man Jones on some of those plays. So that's very interesting to hear. However, Zamp still says that he needs to be more consistent, and he's not going to get caught up on his ability. He wants to see productivity. Also, James Wright is another guy that a lot of people have forgot, and he's a little bit of an afterthought after his microfracture knee surgery. But in my opinion, I feel like his injury led to Brandon Tate making the roster last year. It might not have been the sole reason, but it definitely cleared the way for Brandon Tate to stick on the roster. So I can look to see James Wright coming back and making an impact. Now, he only played in a little bit of limited drills and ran routes, but he didn't go full speed or go completely within the offense. So James Wright is a guy to watch. I'm definitely going to watch him because the year that AJ Green and Marvin Jones and Tyler Eifert went out, James Wright was a guy that could step up and be dependable, and Andy loved to target him, so keep an eye on him. Cody Core, another guy that Zamp says looks great as a football player. He loves the things that he can do. Cody Core to me is a lock. A lot of people might not agree, but to me, when the Bengals invested draft pick and all of the research they put on the guy, the fact that he has the personality traits to be coachable, I think that he's a guy who could also make the roster. Jake Kumerow was also a guy who turned a lot of heads and showed that he could be more dependable, according to Zampese, but he has to see if Jake Kumerow can consistently get off the line. Kumerow is a fan favorite. He's a tall guy. He can step in. He can be dependable. Reminds me a lot of TJ Houshmandzadeh. That might be a stretch, but he's a poor man's TJ Houshmandzadeh, in my opinion. Also, don't sleep on Alonzo Russell. Alonzo Russell is a guy that came into Cincinnati as a college free agent, but keep an eye on this guy. He's very consistent. I reviewed his tape and his film during the entire draft process, and he was a guy who also ranked highly for the Bengals as a match on Prime. Michael Bennett is a guy that might not make the roster. He's more of a practice squad candidate, so he's not an immediate threat. Zampese also stated that Tyler Boyd is as advertised, but just needs to have a little bit of polish on his game in terms of fundamentals. And he also stated that Boyd will definitely be involved in this offense. He also said similar things about Brandon LaFell. Brandon LaFell looks to be the guy across from AJ. And Brandon LaFell said that he can't wait to get single coverage, and he can't wait until AJ gets double teamed and Tyler Eifert gets back. And he said that this team can be better than they were last year and not consider themselves a burden on this offense, and loves how this offense is coming together. So with that being said, it's going to be a tough one, guys, because Brandon Tate is doing his thing, unfortunately. So we're going to have to see a multitude of things. This could be the biggest battle in camp to see what these guys are going to do. I'd also like to talk about the defensive lineman rotation. And shout out to my boy on YouTube, James Russ. Thanks for that comment, man. I definitely wanted to touch on the rotation. And so for you, man, I'm definitely going to touch on it. So, as we know, the Fisher-Price package, a.k.a. Geno Atkins, a.k.a. Carlos Dunlap, a.k.a. Pat Sims, Fat Sims, if you want to call him that, and Michael Johnson, Agent MJ90, are in need of some help, man. I mean, there hasn't been a lot of guys who have been able to help complement them since those guys were taken. We had guys like Devin still flame out. Brandon Thompson still hasn't shown the consistency. So it's time to upgrade those positions. So of course the prime candidates are Marcus Hunt, who as of now has been a disappointment, but he hasn't had the opportunities, and it's looked like Hunt is being moved around all over the defensive line by Burney, and Burney is driving home the importance of this rotation. He's a well-resumed, experienced coach, so he is definitely going to put his stamp on fixing our defensive line rotation. We also have another guy by Will Clark taken out of West Virginia. This guy can also be a pretty good guy. He compares to me like a Michael Johnson. He's built the same way. He's athletic, but we have to see the consistency from him. And due to the lack of snaps last year taken up by Wallace Gilberry and some other guys, it's time to see what the youth can do, and they're going to get thrown into the fire. But this is an important rotation that we need to see, especially with Andrew Billings coming in. Be interesting to see how much he gets into that rotation with Domata Peko and Pat Sims in front of him. So that will be interesting. How they move him, where they move him, will they replace him with Geno, what's going to happen. So it's going to be an interesting part to see, but that's very important. Dwight Freeney is also said to still be in play, so stay tuned for that. There isn't any confirmation from either side. The Bengals also haven't closed the door on Leon Hall as well, so stay tuned. The Bengals still aren't done, and we can see a lot of moves be made, but one thing is for sure, just like James said, this rotation and Burney's impact on it is definitely going to be a thing to watch. So last but not least, we had to hit you guys with some more minicamp takeaways, being as the next time that we'll see these guys is a little far off, as training camp hasn't been announced yet as far as the dates. But we'll talk about some of the takeaways. Chykie Brown, I hope that I'm saying his name right, has impressed and caught the attention of Kevin Coyle. So make sure you stay tuned on that, guys. He's a guy that could possibly be either a practice squad guy or an end of the roster replacement in the secondary. So it's kind of interesting because this guy came from the Ravens. He played for the Giants last year and pretty much flamed out in both places, but he's a guy that could be a productive guy here. He might be a sleeper. So Kevin Coyle seems to like this guy, so I definitely keep your antennas tuned into this guy. And next, CJ Uzomah. This might be the CJ Uzomah show because I love talking about this guy on here. But Marvin Lewis said that he looks good, but only in shorts. So we have to see when the pads come on. But this is a guy that played at Auburn and primarily didn't even have a tight end coach. He had a receiver coach. So I'm interested to see his receiver skills. But this guy is huge in stature and he is an athlete. And they tried to say that he was very raw, but he seemed to take a slight bit of offense to the notion that he was a raw player. It more so was, from his standpoint, a mental aspect of figuring out how to transition to being in a offense. So keep your eyes on CJ Uzomah. He could be a guy with Croft to battle it out and be productive and be a surprise, a delighting surprise for the Bengals. Also, Brandon Tate.
Oh no.
Yeah,
No,
we're not going to talk about Brandon Tate. Josh Shaw is also getting looks at safety heavily in camp, which I could definitely see him making this end of the roster as a safety with the logjam at corner with so much talent there. Why not put Shaw, a guy who was very productive last year, at safety? I could see him primarily playing in that safety to free safety role and also a nickel corner role. He is very versatile and he is a very good guy in coverage. So keep an eye on Josh Shaw. He's getting a lot of work there. It could spell the end for Taylor Mays possibly as well. Zampese's offense has been the theme of camp. How fluid they are, how confident they are, how comfortable Andy Dalton is, how much the offense is going in against this defense. And it's just amazing to see a seamless transition, which we all expected just due to the comfortability of this offense, of Andy last year, and his command over the offense. So that's not a surprise, but it's still great to hear, especially things like AJ killing guys in practice. Also, WJ3 on the last day shines. This guy is deflecting everything. He started off bringing in and learning all of the fundamental plays, and Pac-Man is taking this guy under his wing, and it's working. So WJ3, the first round pick that the Steelers tried to lie and say they baited us into, which was confirmed by their cornerbacks coach, might I add, is looking very promising. Last but not least, Cedric Ogbuehi, our first round pick from last year, is getting some looks at left tackle along with Jake Fisher. So we know that Ogbuehi is going to start off the season at right tackle, but it's going to be interesting to see who will back up the left and right tackle position. Going to be very interesting because both guys can play both. They both have the size that the Bengals look for at that position, so it will be very interesting. Also, the joint training camp is going to be very unique. It's going to be great to see Zim back with the guys. It's going to be great to have some former Bengals back in the camp. Andre Smith, Terrence Newman, Emmanuel Lamore. So I think that that's going to be a great experience. I'd love to see if Zimmer could, mold a little bit of WJ3. I mean, Zimmer was one of my favorite coaches. It's great to see him back here in Cincinnati. The only thing Mike Zimmer could do to shade us was take Laquan Treadwell, but that's neither here nor there. Love to see Big Zim coming back to the Natty for sure. So since you guys have been such great listeners and supporters on the show, whether it's on SoundCloud, YouTube leaving comments, Twitter following me, I wanted to do something special for you guys. And if you guys continue to like us on Facebook, I'll do these special hidden bonus segments for you guys. So today, starting it off, we're going to do a segment called Numbers Don't Lie, where we will be focusing today on AJ Green. Now, as you guys know, on my last podcast, on episode 3, I stated that AJ Green was the best receiver in the NFL, okay? But saying it isn't enough. I wanted to have some numbers that would back me up. So as I stated, AJ Green didn't see nowhere near as many targets as Antonio Brown. But what if he did? So I decided to answer that question through the use of calculation with some key stats. We looked at AJ's catch rate, which was 65%. We also looked at his yards per target, his yards per catch, and his yak per reception. So looking at things, AJ had a catch rate, as I said, of 65%, which means that he's going to catch 65% of those extra targets. He also has a yards per target average of 10.13. In comparison, AB's yards per target were 9.55, 17th overall, and Julio's were 9.22, 21st overall at the receiver position. Now, his yards per catch average was 15 yards, so anytime AJ had a catch, his average was at least 15 yards. Now, he also had a yards after catch reception, or yak / reception, of 11.49, which was 5th overall. AB in comparison was 9.17, and Julio was 8.76. Okay, so AB was 16th, Julio was 20th, and AJ was 5th. Now the total number of targets: AB was first with 205, Julio was second with 203, and AJ was 16th with 140. So after running these calculations and using the catch rate to compensate for those 65 extra targets, the new numbers for AJ Green after this analysis were that AJ Green would have 128 receptions, 1,930 yards, and 13 touchdowns. And the touchdowns were figured out by his touchdowns per target. He had 140 targets and 10 touchdowns, which brought that down to 14. And when you divide that in, that's 3 more touchdowns. So in comparison, AB put up the numbers of 136 receptions, 1,834 receiving yards, and 10 touchdowns. Now, this isn't anything against AB. I'm not hating on him because he's a Steeler. AB is a great receiver. He can do a lot of things. He's very tough. I have a lot of respect for him. I remember when he got his start as soon as Mike Wallace left. He's been dependable, but he simply is not an AJ Green to me, and they play in 2 different systems. So if AJ Green played in that system with a Ben Roethlisberger where he would be a target monster, those would be the numbers projected for him. And last but not least, we'll have our formerly known as the Twitter poll, now known as the New Stripe City poll, which will be posted on our blog as well as on Twitter. So I ask you guys this: who do you think the Bengals will replace Tez with during his suspension? Will it be Paul Dawson? Will it be Vincent Ray? Will it be Marquise Flowers? Or will it be somebody else? We'll find out on the next episode of New Stripe City. As always, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube page. You subscribe to our blog. Make sure you like us on Facebook. Do whatever you can, man, because we truly appreciate it. We wanted to give the underground a voice, and now we have one thanks to you guys. And this is my new signature slogan in my outro, okay? It's Who Day, all day, every day, and especially on Sunday.